A wake-up call to all Americans. Regardless if you have conflicting views. It's a beautiful thing to live in a country where you would die for someone you fundamentally disagree with. Our constantly evolving and devolving government has done many great things as well as horrific. You can't have the sweetness without the bitter. There is an epidemic failure among society as well as our government to recognize the harsh realities of their decisions toward a vast variety of issues. Let's focus on the silent majority as well as the fanatics, left or right. Makes absolutely zero difference. For well over 50 recent years as well as hundreds of years before that, medicine was making quantum leaps in medicinal discovery that has enabled us to almost master certain illnesses. Simply speaking, we are speaking about the entire lifespan of American democracy. From smallpox vaccinations to today's simple penicillin changed how well people can live, and with an extended lifespan that was unheard of. The epidemic failure to tackle deeply rooted issues like addiction correctly has led to as many deaths as car accidents. That's a staggering image to quantify. How can we let our own families and friends become physically dependent on medications that doctors abused? The whole opioid epidemic is a direct result of illogical thinking about what should be considered legal and what should be considered medical legal use. Yup. I have to go there. Yes, it's about a plant. Yes, plants can be synthesized into narcotics like the opium flower. I'm willing to bet there has never been an overdose from a worker chewing on plant leaves. This goes for opioid and cocaine. We all know how in the early 1900s it was even in the common Coca-Cola soda, correct? Or we step back and look at the history of the use of the plants and medicines that have been around since the beginning of time, and even more evident, marijuana was known and grown by our founding fathers. Most enjoyed farming, growing tobacco and hemp for its various uses, as well as its medicinal uses for smoking. If it was so dangerous, our founding fathers would not have put it on our currency to look at every day. No, they had a true view of what was going on and what freedoms were worth fighting for. Fast forward to the past 50 years where marijuana has been abundantly clear that it is not a drug in the sense where it should be lumped into any category, since it cannot be synthesized into a different form of the drug that can kill you with an overdose. In reality, anyone who has used marijuana in their life, whether it be a common citizen or the President of the United States, it's evident it has been part of Americana culture since the beginning of our country's lifespan. The biased views and corrupt information made by the government made a whole generation of baby boomers who think marijuana is smoking dope. No, it's not the same or even close. The reality is that it is and has been manipulated into a demon. Well, many of the opioid overdoses are a direct result in the government's laws on the plant. I personally know you can use marijuana before certain athletic activities as well as academically. So we have recent generations that started using it as adolescents. They continue to use it effectively and safely to their advantage to help calm themselves, to perform their best, to increase the creativity in the art of taking a test, running or throwing a football, etc. These generations graduated college, took abnormal psychology. They know about drug use. They went to college to learn more about it. They realized the government's reality doesn't equal or match the collective views of its use. Higher learning has a disparaging difference in facts and information given to us. Most colleges encourage you to question our government, or there would not be any progress. It stays in your system for the longest of any illegal drug, and would force the individual to quit using something that has helped them succeed their whole life. Not an advantage, just allowing them to reach their full potential. Today we would call it living your best life. So this young adult graduates and finds him or herself in uncharted waters. What you were taught in the classroom barely resembles any bit of reasonable thinking, which is the backbone of our whole Constitution and whole idea of democracy. Parents all over the country are grieving for lost children who died before their time. The government has unfairly put every citizen who used marijuana as an anxiety reliever or another use for pain. Making people taking medicine pushed by Big Pharma has led to hundreds of thousands of accidental overdoses, or even first-time users. So after 30 to 40 years of shoving heroin in a pill to you at astronomical doses that are higher than real street heroin, not fentanyl, people have accidentally or unknowingly become physically, or even mentally addicted to a substance they would have never used if marijuana was viewed properly. Anyone who says marijuana is just as dangerous as alcohol obviously has never used it, or used it properly. I've never heard a story as a former law enforcement officer that a man using marijuana beat his wife or wrapped his car around a tree. It just doesn't happen. And it's coincidence at best if an accident did occur after marijuana use. Parents would gladly allow or change their view if they could have their son or daughter back, but they use marijuana. And had secretly or publicly anyway. But was put in a situation they could not help themselves out of. Like opioid addiction. The government has taken little responsibility. I love how California is decades ahead of the rest of American society. They seem to be allowed to have the biggest voice due to ethical leaders like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Maybe we should amend our constitution so a man with his disposition, and who is uncorrupted, can become president. We need to make the changes together or not at all. Voting on a ballot is obviously pointless if the government is going to trump state law. Hey, if the majority of the states want legalization, I'm sorry minority, it should be completely legal on all accounts. It has been demonized, causing a chain reaction to an epidemic that is out of control. The simple fact that the powers that be simply haven't found a way to make money, or not lose money, off your medical freedom or death for that matter is unacceptable. Doctors only follow popular belief, not what is actually right for the patient. It's sad and despicable. Now the government wants to push this alternative called buprenorphine or Suboxone/Subutex. It has very mild medicinal use and should only be used short term. It should not be given as a substitute. Reason? It's 10 times harder to stop taking it. It's 10 times more efficient at binding to opioid receptors than illegal substances, and the doses given are basically the same thing as being chained to heroin or another addicting medication or drug. You will get sick worse than the chemical you originally used if you try to stop. Another shot in the arm as Big Pharma is capitalizing and preying on a deficiency that can be corrected with alternative thinking as well as alternative treatment. Also, not everyone who became addicted to it once or even multiple times does not automatically mean they are drug addicts. They are mostly physically addicted or even mentally, but there is an underlying reason why they used in the first place. Rehabilitation services that offer help with addiction actually end up brainwashing the individual to admit they are an addict by requiring the person every time they introduce themselves to say, "I'm John Doe, and I'm addict." Instead of, "Hi, I'm Joe, and I used medication or drugs because of whatever the underlying cause is." Not focusing on the negative, rehabilitation services want to use more negative reinforcement than positive. We need to bind together. Our differences are the same things that make us a democracy capable of changing on a dime. Our Constitution clearly states that if the leaders of said government are not putting the people first or manipulating the masses, it's time to make the votes count and change what needs to be changed. Even if our whole governmental system needs ratification. Want America great again? Like it has never been great? How about making it greater or more great? Written in haste and uncorrected by Drew Michael Corsilli.